Hi, this is a course on program evaluation and intervention studies. In week 1, we're going to look at evaluation theory, specifically utilization-focused evaluation. This is a statistics course, but with all studies, we begin with a research or study design. And so for this first week, we're going to look at we're going to learn about program evaluation and intervention studies, and we're going to start with our study design, and we're going to have that influenced by our evaluation theory. So for our weekly sessions, again, our first session in week 1 is evaluation theory, utilization-focused evaluation. In week 2, we're going to cover regression adjustment, and that's for linear and logistic regression. And the topic for week 3 is our first causal model, and that is using differences in differences regression models. And for our 4th week, that's our second causal model case, and that will use interrupted time series regression modeling. For the course material, there are no assignments. All readings are optional. We have our files. All PowerPoints, readings, and our files can be found in my Stats with Steve team channel. This is for our company users, and you can find the location of the files here. I do have YouTube links and course material to my previous courses that cover some of the topics in greater detail, and those links are found here, or if you're on the YouTube channel, you can search through the different playlists. And here's today's meeting agenda. For the first 5 minutes, we're going to have our welcome and course overview. We'll identify the course outline, review the various health outcomes that regression, program evaluation, and intervention studies can assess. It's just the start to that list, not the full complete list. And in the first discussion, we're going to look at research and evaluation theory. We'll introduce the concepts of research and evaluation theory, contrast research and evaluation, and expand on the implications of generalizability in healthcare projects. In our second discussion, that will be on utilization-focused evaluation, where our learning objectives are to introduce utilization-focused evaluation by Michael Patton, discuss the selection of statistical methods and statistical power for program evaluations, intervention studies, and primary research. And for our last 5 minutes, we're going to wrap up and cover our next steps. We'll review and outline steps in preparation for the next session. Okay, so here's our course overview. This represents the entire course, and we can see that we will introduce program evaluation and intervention studies. We're going to show how to conduct these studies within a regression framework. Regression is a powerful tool, as one of my professors once said. It's the bread and butter of statistical techniques. It really opens the door for a lot of different analyses, and it's a workhorse in terms of how often we use it. So we're going to use regression methods. We'll introduce methods that can improve standard regression analyses, such as top coding with very positively skewed cost data or length of stay, and we'll also use propensity score matching. We use the propensity covariate adjustment to allow us to balance and control for competing causes of the outcome that we're interested in. And we'll provide statistical tools to simplify work and help interpret results. I wrote a package called HAM in R, and that has some of those options. And we'll see that it applies to all outcomes such as 30-day mortality, readmissions, infections, costs, length of stay, and so on. So we have a lot of different healthcare outcomes that we're interested in. Some are even cost outcomes or operational outcomes, and we can use these techniques or these methods that we're going to cover today and in the remaining 3 other sessions. They can apply in all of those situations and help the work we do. Okay, so let's begin with program evaluation and intervention studies. We'll have an introduction and a review. And the first question we might have is, what is a program evaluation and an intervention study? And Michael Patton defines a program evaluation as the systematic collection of information about the activities, characteristics, and outcomes of programs to make judgments about the program, improve effectiveness, and or inform decisions about the future programming. Both are common studies within research and evaluation, and the primary difference between research and evaluation is that a purpose of research is generalizability. That is, producing results that may be applicable to different settings, samples, and time periods. We often use the phrase intervention study more with research, but for this course, we're going to compare and contrast intervention studies and program evaluation, and we'll see that if you're in a hospital system where you want to spread programs to different hospitals or different departments, we're going to see that multi-site evaluation and intervention studies look almost identical. So in this slide, we're going to cover the origin of program evaluation. Program evaluation as a distinct field began from large-scale social experimentation and government intervention. For example, there was Title IX in 1972, which opened the door for evaluation at the federal level. We often saw that the government required evaluation of programs that it funded, and we've had that practice in place since then. And I think it actually, because it predates 1972, and it may, I believe, John or Robert Kennedy in the 60s signed off that made it a requirement. With the federal funding came a required evaluation. So we know that it began from large-scale social experimentation and government intervention. First, there is not enough money to do all the things that need doing. And second, if there were enough money, it takes more than money to solve complex human and social problems. There must be a basis for deciding which things are worth doing, hence evaluation. So we have evaluation as a need in how we use our resources at the federal level, and now it's widely accepted that if you're in an organization that has limited resources and we want to know how to spend those, then we should evaluate the programs that we're funding. In Michael Patton's book, he has different exhibits with sets of policy and practical information. And one of them is Exhibit 1.2, and it covers the premises of reinventing government. First, what gets measured gets done. 2, if you don't measure results, you can't tell success from failure. 3, if you can't see success, you can't reward it. 4, if you can't reward success, you're probably rewarding failure. 5, if you can't see success, you can't learn from it. And number 6, if you can't recognize failure, you can't correct it. And number 7 is, if you can't demonstrate results, you can't win public support. So these were things learned through the government process of requiring evaluation, and these were the things to help identify opportunity and draw conclusions from that. So that's from Patton on page 14. And the book, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, the book is Utilization-Focused Evaluation, the third edition by Michael Quinn Patton. I'll reference it throughout this presentation, but that's the book that I'm referring to. Utilization-Focused Evaluation, the third edition by Michael Quinn Patton. So let's cover comparing program evaluation and intervention studies. The difference between research and evaluation has been called by Cronbach and Supes as the difference between conclusion-oriented and decision-oriented inquiry. Research aims to produce knowledge and truth. Useful evaluation supports actions. Robert Stake and Lee Cronbach have emphasized that evaluation differs from research in the relative importance attached to making a generalization. So with research, there's a high level of importance attached to making a generalization, taking your samples data and making a generalization to the larger population. Within the field of program or just regular evaluation, there's less importance attached to making a generalization. In any data collection effort, the extent to which there is concern about utility, generalizability, scientific rigor, and relevance of the findings to specific users will vary. Again, some studies might really require a higher level of generalizability, while other programs don't. So it's going to vary between research and evaluation, and even within research and evaluation, there might be a higher need for generalizability than in some studies compared to other studies. And in this slide, how program evaluation and intervention studies overlap. Because evaluations don't rely on generalizability, they can focus their analysis directly on their sample without attempting to generalize to a larger population. In fact, evaluations are often done without any statistical analysis. I think that maybe have been more of the case in the past. Now it's a lot easier to collect data, more so than it was 20 years ago, and definitely more so than it was 50 years ago. But you still will see evaluations today without any inferential statistics, and maybe even without any descriptive statistics, and that's perfectly okay. That's part of what evaluation is focused on, is really understanding what that specific setting is experiencing, and how to understand how that program works. So we don't always need statistics to do that. But I think in general, the trend has been that we're seeing more of it in evaluation, just because it's a lot easier now to collect data than it was just a couple decades ago. However, multi-site evaluations can strongly resemble research studies. For example, a hospital's program evaluation results may contribute to decisions of spreading the program to other hospitals. So if you're in one hospital or in one sort of clinic, you may be just interested in those patients that you're treating, and you may even know the stakeholders or primary intended users may even know these people by name, and there may just be a handful of patients that they treat. But if you're in a hospital system that has many hospitals, the most efficient way to gather information of whether a program should be spread to other programs is to first introduce that program, usually in a hospital that is in most need of the program that you're going to evaluate, and then determine how well it works there, and then try to generalized to the larger hospital system to help answer that question, can we use this in different hospitals? Is it a good idea? Will it help us accomplish the outcomes that we're interested in improving? And so in that case, we're going to use statistics quite a bit, and we're going to look at generalizability to help answer whether we can take this one program in this one hospital and spread it successfully across our different hospital systems. In these cases, research and evaluation may look identical, or at least use the same statistical methods. Okay, in this slide we're going to look at blending program evaluation and intervention studies. We can improve our studies or experiments by blending methods of both types of studies. We sometimes call this mixed methods, but there are no rules that prohibit the methods used in research or evaluation. Within program evaluations, they often use qualitative methods more than research studies. However, we do have qualitative research, and in that case, you would definitely see qualitative research methods used throughout that study. So there actually is no rule against us using both methods. Even though we call it mixed methods, we often see quantitative and qualitative methods used in many studies. We often see them in the form of interviews or even questionnaires, open-ended questions especially, and surveys. We might see some of those results, some of those themes from those qualitative studies being used in more quantitative analyses and vice versa. And we see that this can be done successfully. The winners of the 2019 Nobel Prize in Economics did so with their experimental evaluation framework, and that's by Banerjee, Duflo, and Kramer. And there's the press release in this link at the bottom. So we know that there are many different evaluation methods, so it's helpful to know which evaluation method should I use. And how we can help answer that is by keeping in mind that evaluation methods can be highly specialized. More than one may suit your need, in fact. Michael Patton identifies at least 101 evaluation methods. And this YouTube address right here covers that. He quickly reviews those 101 evaluation methods, and we see that a highly flexible evaluation method is by Michael Quinn Patton, and it's his utilization-focused evaluation. So now we're going to go into the topic of utilization-focused evaluation. This is the evaluation theory developed by Michael Quinn Patton. He's been doing it since the 70s, and it's really just a flexible approach that I think is helpful for the field of healthcare. And so let's begin the introduction and review. And utilization-focused evaluation, as opposed to program evaluation, is evaluation done for and with specific intended primary users for specific intended uses. So the two main things I want to point out there is intended primary users, and the second is intended uses. So in utilization-focused evaluation, there's a strong emphasis on identifying our primary users and our intended uses. So if we know who's using the information and how they're using it, then we can develop program evaluations that have the most impact. And what he refers to as utilization-focused is not just focusing on how these programs are utilized, but also focusing on how do we get our evaluation studies utilized by the user. So the ultimate goal is to provide useful information that will actually be used by our clients. There is the description that he points out to evaluation studies that gather dust on cabinets or bookshelves. And so that's what he wants to avoid. He wants our evaluations to be a useful tool in itself. So now we'll cover program evaluation utility. Questions on program utility and use of resources raise fundamental questions about the role of evaluation. Can evaluations contribute to increased program effectiveness? Can evaluation be used to improve programs? Do evaluators bear any responsibility for use in program improvement? Patton answers these questions as yes, and offers utilization-focused evaluation as an approach for realizing evaluation's original vision of contributing to long-term program effectiveness and improved decision-making. So from his perspective, our work can be helpful long-term for these different programs in getting use or benefit from our work. And Patton says evaluation should first be useful. Before the field of evaluation identified and adopted its own standards, criteria for judging evaluations could scarcely be differentiated from criteria for judging research in the traditional social and behavioral sciences, namely technical quality and methodological rigor. In other words, use was ignored. The first, I think if I remember correctly, the first evaluators were often researchers, and so they, as you would imagine, approached an evaluation by many of the same practices we use in evaluations, such as identifying our outcome, identifying possible variables that could predict or explain that variation in our outcome, and approached it just like a standard research study. However, we don't get as much out of that process as we could if we include greater emphasis on the intended uses of the program and the evaluation, as well as really tailoring it to the needs of our primary intended users. And we saw that early on, methods decisions dominated the evaluation design process. Methodological rigor meant experimental designs, quantitative data, and sophisticated statistical analyses. Whether decision makers understood such analyses was not the researcher's problem. And we have an underlying concept of utilization-focused evaluation. Utilization-focused evaluation begins with the premise that evaluations should be judged by their utility and actual use. Therefore, evaluators should facilitate the evaluation process and design any evaluation with careful consideration of how everything that is done from beginning to end will affect its use. Therefore, the focus in focused evaluation, is on intended use by intended users. So we really want to know, what is it that our clients could really benefit from. We want to know how they're going to use this information, how their program works, and how it can be improved. And if we can do that, we can provide useful information and greater utility in those results and from our program evaluations or intervention studies. So in this slide, we're going to review our audiences. In any evaluation, there are many potential stakeholders and an array of possible uses. Utilization-focused evaluation inquires to primary intended users of their explicit commitments to concrete specific uses. The evaluator facilitates judgment and decision-making by intended users rather than acting as a distant, independent judge. Since no evaluation can be value-free, utilization-focused evaluation answers the question of whose values will frame the evaluation by working with clearly identified primary intended users who have responsibility to apply evaluation findings and implement recommendations. What he really emphasizes is use in terms of what the uses are and who the primary users are. So one thing that we do have when conducting analysis or statistical work is that we may have some sort of bias in just even the variables that we select or the outcomes that we're looking at, or who we may ask for their help or for their input on our different programs. And it's natural, of course, that our research or our evaluation team would have some sort of bias. So we know that that's going to be something that's always in place. It's, with the quality of work that we do, we probably see less and less bias over the years, but it's still there. And Michael Patton acknowledges that and actually suggests that because of that, then we would want to bias in the right direction, to be biased in the right direction. And by that he means that we should take into account the understanding, the knowledge and beliefs of our primary intended users. So we want to rely heavily on their input to help guide our studies, and that should give you more accurate results. So in summary, utilization-focused evaluation does not advocate any particular evaluation, content, model, method, theory, or even use. Rather, it is a process for helping primary intended users select the most appropriate content, model, methods, theory, and uses for their particular situation. For example, we may assess more outcomes than we originally started with after talking with stakeholders and primary intended users. So we may, within our own department, we may get assigned to evaluate a program, and our leaders or our boss or our colleagues may suggest a certain set of outcomes, and we may discover that while working with the primary intended users, there may be other benefits to the program. They may use it in different ways than what our own department may suggest, and so we may want to include other outcomes in addition to what we originally set out to examine. So by doing so, we're going to get a richer study that provides more information, but we're also going to get a study that reaches a wider set of audiences. And if we can evaluate the performance on the key outcomes, then we should have a better understanding by our clients and our different audiences, and we should have it should give us as evaluators better buy-in on our results, because we're going to include more staff, but but by doing so, we're going to gather valid results, but a broader set of results that apply in many situations. And finally, utilization-focused evaluation can include any evaluation purpose, formative or summative or developmental, any kind of data, quantitative, qualitative, mixed, any kind of design, for example, naturalistic or experimental, and any kind of focus, for example, process, outcomes, impacts, costs, and cost benefit, and so on. So just to review that a little more, we have different evaluated purposes. We have formative evaluation and summative evaluation. And so formative evaluation is that we're evaluating with the purpose of helping to develop the program or fine-tune it. We may come in as the program is getting started after it's been successfully implemented at its early stages, and we may help to fine-tune it, find areas that it can improve on, whereas summative evaluation is kind of that last step after we've seen data collection of a period that represents its full implementation, and we may give a decision we may evaluate that program of how well it has performed after its full implementation or complete use. So in that case, that also does look more like research. With research, we're doing that. We're looking at the process after it's completed. So they resemble each other there, but also we can do research at the formative stages as well. But what Michael Patton stresses is that utilization-focused evaluation can work in many situations, and it's designed to do so and can help for a lot of our different outcomes. And I think in our healthcare setting, we're often faced with a lot of different outcomes, settings. COVID is a good example. We had to kind of change gears in a lot of different ways. Now we're analyzing data post-COVID, and we need to adjust in how we assess our performance in the face of great changes. So that's what we're going to look at for our statistical analyses. For that part of the course, we're going to use our program evaluation and intervention studies to help identify how to best set up a study, and then we're going to use our flexibility in those studies design. That's going to require some flexibility in our statistical methods. So we're going to blend the two. I'm going to cover a portion from the appendix about how to use a research design, how to use those techniques to help improve our evaluation methods. We're going to do the analyses with the assumption that we're within a hospital system or a larger system where we want to spread our program at one hospital across different hospitals. And so we're going to use some of those techniques that we would use in that situation. And one technique that we can use in a program evaluation is to incorporate our different research methods to strengthen our study, to get more validity in our results, and that would allow for greater generalizability of our results to a larger setting. So let's cover combining research and evaluation. In this slide, we see that we can follow the same research methods to provide our evaluations with more valid results. Intervention studies primarily reside within the research framework, but program evaluation can use the same methods. The following are the main steps. We first want to come up with research questions or study questions. Our hypotheses are based on our research questions, which are informed by the theory we read during our literature review. We have our research design, and this is where we formalize how we'll answer our research questions and hypotheses. We try to reduce internal and external threats to validity. Internal threats pertain to how we did the study, and external threats pertain to generalizations from the study. For example, we may use multiple time periods and or multiple groups to strengthen our validity. And that brings us to research methods. These are the analytical methods we'll use to accurately answer our research questions. Here are statistics. And we have our most common design, which is we often use the quasi-experimental research design. It isn't the true experiment approach. For example, research done in a lab. That would be considered a true experiment. We can't do that with human subjects. And in healthcare, it can be impractical or unethical to use randomization of subjects into control or treatment groups. We instead rely on our research design to give us the most accurate results. So if we have a really good program that we know works, we wouldn't want to have a program that we're going to withhold a really beneficial program to our patients for the sake of doing a randomized experiment. So what we do instead, we're going to strengthen our research design to help give us more accurate results. And here's a classic research design. It's in the Shadish, Campbell, and Cookbook on research design. And we see that this is the untreated control group design with dependent pre-test and post-test samples. So if we scroll down to the bottom, we see that there's a table that has NR in that first column. Then it has O1 for observation 1. And then on the last column, there's O2, which is observation 2. We have our treatment group up top, and we know that because we have a treatment denoted with that X between the first and second observation. In our control group, at both time periods, observation 1 and observation 2, neither have that treatment indicated by an X. So we have in this design, we have our treatment group up top, our control group at the bottom. So we're going to compare a treatment and control group, and then we have a pre and a post-test that are separated by the treatment being given. Okay, so these are all of the different slides we had for program evaluation and intervention studies. We covered we gave an introduction and review of that in the first half, and in this last half of the video, we've covered utilization-focused evaluation, a very flexible approach that focuses on use, and that's use of what our program does and use of our results, as well as our users, who we'd consider primary intended users. These are stakeholders, but with the purpose of using this program that we're evaluating for some sort of outcome. So we'll continue with more of these videos, and thank you for listening.